Welcome to Building Business with Soul with Coach Arliss. This is a show where we will dive into the soulful approach to business, get nerdy with some brain science, and learn the nuts and bolts of how business owners build success through their passion. Let's take a moment to get focused and centered with one round of box breathing. During this mindful breathing, you'll breathe in to a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and then breathe out for a count of 4. Let's begin. Breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 1, 2, 3, 4. And breathing out for 1, 2, 3, and 4. Fantastic. Great job getting centered. Today, we're going to focus on how to stop flipping our lid and how to step into mindfulness in our businesses. Mindfulness is defined as the act of being in the present moment through awareness and non-judgmental acceptance. And why is this important for business owners? Well, being mindful allows us to reduce the feelings of being under pressure in our business. And we know from research that we do not function best when we are under pressure. We actually function best in our business when we're in a calm place. And one of the ways that we can get to a calm place is by practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness also helps us make clear-minded decisions. And decision-making is a huge part of owning a business and running a business smoothly and successfully. Mindfulness allows us to navigate difficult emotions and circumstances. We have all had difficult emotions and circumstances come up in our business, and sometimes we end up flipping our lid. And so when we practice mindfulness, we can stop that from happening. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a couple moments. Mindfulness also allows us to be in reality and to stop wishing things were different. When we are in reality, in awareness of what's going on in our business or in our lives, it allows us to make change and to see the growth that we're looking for in our business. Mindfulness also allows us to have greater positivity in our business and to be gentle with ourselves and others. When we're able to be gentle with ourselves and others, we're able to show compassion to ourselves and to others. And in previous shows that I've done, we talked about how compassion is the number one thing that allows us to be resilient in our businesses. Okay, so I told you that we were going to talk about how we are going to be able to stop flipping our lid. And we're going to get into some neuroscience of mindfulness in order to do this. And I want to let you know that this is highlighting the research done by Dr. Daniel Siegel. And he has written a book called Aware, The Science and Practice of Presence. And I highly recommend it. It's a way that you can learn how to deepen your practice of mindfulness in your business. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the nerdy science behind mindfulness. The more we commit to bringing mindfulness to ourselves, the more activity there will be in our prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking brain. Our prefrontal cortex is the area of our brain right here. And this can act as the brakes to emotional reactivity. The less we put an effort into bringing mindfulness into our business, we will be interacting from our amygdala, or our emotional brain, which acts as the accelerator and causes us to flip our lid. Okay, so get your hand out, because guess what? We can use this as an analogy for our brain. So if we're using our hand and our wrist as an analogy for our brain, then the wrist area is our brain stem. The thumb will be our amygdala. And then our fingers, when we close our fist, become our neocortex, which is where our prefrontal cortex is. And this is where the planning and thinking part of our brain is out here in the neocortex, in our prefrontal cortex. So Dr. Danielle Siegel came up with the analogy of flipping our lid. So if our wrist is our brainstem, this is the part of our brain and our spine that is responsible for alertness and sleep and heartbeat and other involuntary bodily reactions. When our palm is open and our thumb is folded across, and then our fingers are over, this becomes our prefrontal cortex. Okay, so here is our prefrontal cortex if we're using our hand as an analogy. And this part of our brain processes all information and how those details relate to others. So it can understand morality. It can understand other people's feelings, how to regulate emotion, how to make choices, how to read body language. So think secondary emotional brain. This is the one that focuses on higher order emotional stuff. And we know that in our business, understanding and having self-awareness around our own emotions and emotional response is critically important. This helps us be better decision makers. Understanding other people's emotional response is also critically important. So our prefrontal cortex is very important for how we're interacting with ourselves and other people in our business. Our thumb in here is our limbic system, and we are going to identify the amygdala as the end of the thumb. The limbic system is the area of our brain that processes emotions. It's also where memory is stored. So this is our brain. We have our prefrontal cortex, our amygdala, and our brainstem. So at the point when our fingers are raised and we have flipped our lid, as Dr. Danielle Siegel says, we have disconnected our prefrontal cortex from our amygdala. Now, I want you to know anatomically, that is not exactly what happens in our brain. Our prefrontal cortex did not actually disconnect from our limbic system. But when we are in a stressed place, we are thinking, or we are reacting from a place from our amygdala. So how do we go from this, having our flipped lid, to going back to this, which is us feeling as though we are in our thinking brain and we're able to respond from awareness? Well, first, we have to become aware, because when we have flipped our lid, we most likely no longer are able to use our problem-solving skills. We're most likely not thinking from a logical or reasonable place. And an easy analogy for flipping our lid is when you see a 2-year-old having a tantrum or a meltdown, and they're kicking and screaming. That is a great example of what flipping our lid looks like. Now, as adults and as business owners, it might look different to us. Flipping our lid might be getting really angry and yelling. Flipping our lid might be having it turn inward and disconnecting. Flipping our lid may look like crying. Flipping our lid can look a lot of different ways. right? But it's that feeling of being angry or frustrated and feeling out of control of what of our actions are. Has anybody out there ever flipped their lid? And can you think of an example? I was teaching a class earlier today and I asked my students, when are you most likely to flip your lid? And one of my students said, when somebody doesn't complete a task that they've agreed to complete. Another student said, when somebody is really pressuring me on time and they're not honoring my boundaries or not honoring my time. That's another time when I might flip my lid. Another example was when somebody said that they flip their lid when they feel like they're judged by others, especially when they are judged unfairly. So when are the times in your life and business when you're flipping your lid? When you feel that high stress, that high anger, that high frustration, and when we say or do things that later on we don't feel that great about, right? Everybody that I've asked that says that they flip their lid, I follow up and ask them, and how do you feel after that? Do you feel like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I want to be behaving? And most of people say, no, it's not how I want to behave. And I just don't know how to do it differently. And today we're going to talk about how you can do it differently and not flip your lid. So when we feel like we're going to the place of flipping our lid, or we have flipped our lid, the best thing that we can do is try to get back into our thinking brain. Try to get back into that prefrontal cortex. And the easiest way to do that is to get curious with ourselves. Ask ourselves, why am I having this emotional response right now? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling as though a reaction like this is necessary? And as soon as we get back into that thinking part of our brain, we're able to then respond more rationally, respond from a more logical place, and use our problem-solving skills. We're also able to see that we have more options as far as our responses. So when that flipping the lid happens, and we ask ourselves those questions, answers might come to us, such as, I'm feeling really rushed today, and like I don't have time. I'm feeling as though I've been judged. I am experiencing that somebody else is not keeping their commitment. I am experiencing that I'm not upholding a boundary well, or I'm experiencing that someone else is not honoring my boundary. What's important about those answers that you may get from yourself? Well, I hope that those answers that you get from yourself when you are asking yourself questions are I statements back. Because guess what? You flipping your lid, just like me flipping my lid, is within me. It's something that's happening within me that I am reacting to. And whether it feels like it in the moment or not, it is a choice. So the way that we can take our power back and feel empowered to make calm and rational decisions is to take responsibility for the flipping of our lid that's happening. Okay, so the first step to not flipping our lid is getting curious, asking ourselves questions, figuring out what those answers are, and then allowing us to go to a logical and rational place. Another step that we can take in preventing or stopping flipping our lid is to practice mindful breathing. So when we practice mindful breathing, it allows us to go back to that thinking place. It allows us to disengage from our amygdala and go to a calmer place where we don't feel as reactionary. And there's lots and lots of ways that we can practice mindful breathing. And I'm going to tell you 4 ways that you can practice mindful breathing right now. So number one is the box breathing that we did to open up the show and that I do every time I have a show or teach a workshop. We always do some form of mindful breathing. So box breathing is breathing into the count of 4, holding for a count of 4, and breathing out for a count of 4. Let's practice that again right now. Breathing in for 1, 2, 3, and 4. Holding for 1, 2, 3, and 4. And breathing out for 1, 2, 3, and 4. Great job. The next way that we can practice mindful breathing is when we breathe in, saying to ourselves, either inside of our minds or out loud, in. And then when we breathe out, saying it to ourselves, out. Let's go ahead and practice that today. Breathing in and saying in, and breathing out and saying out. The third way that we can practice mindful breathing is through a counting system. So counting 1 as we breathe in, and counting 2 as we breathe out, and sticking with the 1 and then 2. If you lose count along the way, just go ahead and start over. So let's practice that right now. Breathing in and counting 1, and breathing out and counting 2. Great job. The last way that we can practice mindful breathing is through visioning the air that's coming into us. So when we vision the air that's coming into us, we want to vision it as positivity, as positive for our body or healing for our body, positive for our mind or our emotions. And I like to visualize the air colored in a way that feels positive to me. So I like to imagine the air coming into me as golden, sparkly light. For you, it might be blue or pink or green or yellow or orange or red, whatever that color is for you that signifies health and well-being and positivity. We'll visualize when we breathe in that we're breathing that in. And then when we breathe out, we can breathe out whatever doesn't serve us anymore. And that can take on a color as well. For most of the people that I talk to, that color is a black or a gray, smoky color. So, but it could be whatever color works for you that represents what is not serving you anymore. So let's go ahead and practice that form of mindful breathing. Breathing in and visualizing that positive energy coming in, that which serves you coming into your body, and then breathing out, letting go that which no longer serves you. Great job practicing your mindful breathing. So let's recap. When we are in a stressful situation, when we are triggered, we can flip our lid, which means that we are feeling deeply into the emotional response that we have from our amygdala. And this can result in feeling as though the way that we're reacting is not rational, logical, and it takes us away from being able to problem solve. The way that we can stop that feeling of flipping our lid is to get curious about what's going on, how we're feeling, how we're reacting, so that we can get to a place of being able to respond logically and reasonably. We can problem solve the situation, and we can also see more options that are available as far as responses. Another way that we can prevent or stop flipping our lid is by taking a pause and practicing mindful breathing, which you just learned today. You learned how to box breathe, how to breathe in and out, how to breathe by numbers, and how to breathe visualizing positive coming in and allowing that which no longer serves you to go out with your exhale. This These are all ways that you can help yourself be in a place to make the best decisions for you and your business, and to be able to really show up as the entrepreneur that you want to show up as in your business. Let's take a moment today to recognize one thing about yourself. What do you appreciate about yourself today? I'm sure there are so many things that you have done in your business today to support its growth and success. Choose one of them and celebrate that today. Thank you for joining me, Coach Arliss, on Building Business with Soul. If you would like to learn more about me and how I support entrepreneurs, please check out my website, soullutions.com. That's SOULLUTIONS.com. Join me next week when we dive into more soulful approaches to business.